What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and when it comes down to everyone's favorites or least favorite involving things in video games or video games as a whole, everyone has their own opinions, and of course, I respect that. So much, in fact, that I decided to take to Reddit and basically ask different communities what their favorite characters in specific video game franchises are. That being said, just to make this list, because again, there are some video game characters that I definitely love that others might not like for whatever reason. That being said, it's time to count down the top 10 video game characters that I like that others hate. So, simple rule for this one per franchise, and these have to be characters that many people tend to hate that I more or less like, which really does say a lot. And that being said, without further ado, let's get started. Starting off first at number 10, we have Fi from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. And honestly, when it comes down to it, I'm actually the Legend of Zelda franchise is kind of interesting when it comes down to it, because everyone seems to have that sort of sense of like a certain Zelda title over the others. I mean, heck, when it comes down to the N64 Zelda titles, I prefer Ocarina of Time over Majora's Mask. But that being said, I actually kind of like Skyward Sword, even when most people don't tend to like it all that much. And what's especially even more interesting is that a lot of people tend to dislike Fi due to just being your standard annoying sort of Zelda companion or companion of Link. Especially when you consider that most people tend to like Midna for obvious reasons. However, that being said, I actually like Fi. I mean, her more robotic humanoid appearance tends to fit well with the more magical and fantastical universe of the Zelda franchise. And in terms of Skyward Sword, it really does fit the entire thing and feeling of it. Plus, she's basically the spirit of the Master Sword, which the fact that we don't see this sort of thing in the Zelda games after Skyward Sword, yes, this even includes Tears of the Kingdom where Link gets a cool robot arm, is really saying a lot. Plus, the fact that Girahim is also said to be the antithesis to Fi really does have its own sort of thing. Hopefully we get to see this in a later Zelda game, and not a character like Navi. Seriously, if I hear a "Hey, listen" from Navi, she is going to get the business end of a fly swatter. Moving on next at number 9, we have Ben Woodson from Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Justice for All. Alright, we move on from a franchise like is known for its fair amount of debate about which is the best, to a franchise that seems to have its own sort of feel to it that really tends to draw in fans, even though it's a visual novel. And naturally, even with that, I actually like the Ace Attorney franchise ever since I played through the trilogy and Apollo Justice Ace Attorney on the 3DS. That being said, the one thing that I tend to notice is the idea of the third case is the curse of the third case, which, to explain it, every Ace Attorney game, in every Ace Attorney game, the third case or third turnabout is always one of the worst turnabouts of each game. And naturally, when it comes down to it, Turnabout Big Top tends to be the biggest offender of this. That being said, I like all of the third cases, and especially Turnabout Big Top, as they have a lot of interesting characters in the game, from characters like Regina Berry to Money the Monkey, Max Galactica, and arguably enough even Mo Curls, who couldn't tell a joke to save his life. However, one of the characters I actually like is Ben Woodson, who is just kind of an interesting guy who you kind of feel sorry for. I mean, he's a somewhat nebbishy, socially awkward and shy sort of guy who tends to shy away from social situations, and speaking through a ventriloquist dummy, Trilo, who, well, tends to punch him a lot. But honestly, it's these sort of nerdy characters I kinda like. And honestly, it kinda makes you really hope for the best for them in the near future, where they basically gain friends. That being said, I kinda wish he would find a woman his own age than just falling in love with the 16-year-old Regina Berry. Just, seriously, dude, what the heck? Yeah. Moving on next, at number 8, we have the Rabbids from the Rayman franchise. Alright, admission time. I have never played a Rayman title. Naturally, when the Rayman franchise was getting into its popularity, and even though they had games for the N64, I basically saw Rayman as a game series linked with PlayStation. And as you could tell, I was a big Nintendo fan as a kid. I mean, even with that, in terms of the Nintendo 64 or the Nintendo game consoles, in terms of the Nintendo 64, I always spend time either playing either Mario or Pokemon, which really says a lot. But that being said, again, even though I found this on a Mario Reddit thread and a Rayman Reddit thread, there's basically some people who tend to hate the Rabbids. And granted, while Rayman definitely, the Rabbids definitely took over the Rayman franchise from our limbless hero, basically to become video games' answer to the Minions, which, spoiler alert, they're better than the Minions. Even with that, these zany little guys are kind of funny to say the least. But what's even more interesting is that I like the Rabbids due to the Mario plus Rabbids the Mario plus Rabbids series, because their personalities fit so well within the Mario franchise. Granted, I will have a Mario character on here, so don't worry. The Rabbids are going to fit for the Rayman franchise. But even with that, even the Rabbid versions of Mario characters have very amazing personalities. From Rabbid Peach being a social media and tech-obsessed teenage girl, to Rabbid Mario being a rabid version of Mario himself, to Rabbid Rosalina being a bored or teenage goth girl, and even Edge being a flat-out badass with an awesome sword. Honestly, this really proves that all the Rabbids have character of their own. And while Rayman is kind of an interesting one, the Rabbids, I really like the Rabbids because they've got some versatile personalities that really stand out on their own as a part of who they are. Kind of a perfect little mold when you think about it. Really says a lot. Moving on next at number 7, we have Shade Man from Mega Man 7. Alright. Now, I thought I was going to be defending a character like a Robot Master from Mega Man 8 or Mega Man 5 rather than Mega Man 7, which I was very prepared to do so. However, I actually discovered that there was someone on a Mega Man Reddit thread who really doesn't like Shade Man. And I was shocked, since when it comes down to it, Shade Man is one of my favorite Robot Masters from Mega Man 7. He's not my favorite from that game, but that's for another time. But I really enjoy him because he's a vampire, which is like the classic Bram Stoker's Dracula-esque vampire rather than the Twilight-style vampire. And every part of him is just awesome. I mean, his stage is basically a castle/graveyard area that doesn't look out of place of a Castlevania game. His main weapon is the Noise Crush. It's just a simple vampire shriek. And honestly, one of the themes for his stage is basically the opening/motif of the theme of Ghosts and Goblins, which is amazing. However, I have to go even further and talk about the Battle Network or anti-warrior version of Shade Man, who is so intimidating that he serves as an overall threat to the point that he's even crossed over into the Boktai series. And it takes the NetNavi version of Mega Man and Django to try and defeat him. Honestly, that is one of the best things I've ever seen, and it's just flat out awesome. Moving on next at number 6, we have Kaoru Sayama from Yakuza Kiwami 2. Again, like the Mega Man entry, I was so prepared in mentioning Haruka and Taiga Saejima, since I like both of those two characters. However, again, there's one character that, surprisingly enough, I never realized I liked more than anything else, and that's the character of Kaoru Sayama, who, of course, in Yakuza Kiwami 2, is a detective who basically is trying to keep Kazuma, who's basically put on the detail of trying to keep keeping Kiryu alive. And basically, throughout the entirety of the game, you basically learn a lot about her being linked to the Gomi-Joe. But what's especially more interesting is the entire thing where she builds a relationship to him, to the point that she's more or less romantically interested in him. And honestly, it's one of the most sweetest relationships I've ever seen. Which is kind of disappointing that they didn't pursue this even further in Yakuza 3, or return to this in Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Just, it really is surprising. This will be continued in part 2.